Hello, welcome to today's lesson on literature where we'll be looking at plot structure in drama. So, what is the plot structure in drama all about? First off, the plot structure is the underlying framework of a story that shapes the narratives and guides the audience emotional response. So in drama, plot structure typically follows a specific pattern which includes a several key elements that work together to create a cohesive and engaging story. So now what are the elements that makes up the plot structure of drama? We have the exposition, we have the inciting incidents, then the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution or denouement. So to start with the exposition, what do we understand by the exposition in structure of plot drama? So the exposition has to do with the introduction to the story where the certain character and situation are established. So the exposition provides the audience with essential information about the story, setting the stage for the events and how the event is going to unfold. So basically the exposition has to do with the introduction of the story, and it has several factors under it, such as the setting, the characters, and the primary conflict. Then moving on to the rising action as the next structure in drama. The rising action and development. The rising action has to do with a series of events that builds tension and creates obstacles for the characters to overcome. So the rising action, in other words, is where the story conflicts and challenges escalate in order to test the character's ability and how the character can resolve the conflict. So basically, the rising action has to do with how the complications emerge, like how new challenges are and obstacles are introduced, making the situation more intricate, and also the tension builds, that is, the stakes increase, that is, drawing the audience deeper into the conflict. Then the character development, where the characters are tested in order to reveal their true motivations and strengths. Then we have the falling action as another structure in the plot of a drama. Sorry, I said falling action, that climax. The climax has to do with the turning points, that's the situation or the stage where the conflict reaches its highest point or intensity. This one has to do with the most intense or critical moments in the story where the conflict reaches its peak. So the climax is the turning point of the story where the outcome is decided and the characters' fates are determined. So the climax has three categories under it. That's the peak of tension, the crucial decision, and the irreversible shifts. So the climax is the most intense and emotionally charged moment of the play, which serves as the pivotal turning point where the central conflict reaches its highest tension, and it is often a singular impactful scene where the protagonist confronts their greatest challenges or adversary directly. Then moving on to the falling action. The following action can be said to be where the events that follow the climax or where the conflict begins to resolve. So the following action is where the story's tension begins to dissipate and the characters deal with the consequences of their action. So the following action is basically where the conflict begins to unfold. That is, the immediate and ripple effects of the climax begin to manifest. Then we have the resolution, where the remaining subplots and minor conflicts start to find their conclusion. Then lastly, the character reflection, where character reacts to and grapple with the outcome of the turning point. So in the following action, the consequences of the climax unfold, marking a significant shift from peak tensions toward resolution. Then we have the final stage or the final structure under the plot of drama, and that's the resolution. The resolution can also be known as denouement. It's not called denouement, it's called denouement. So the conclusion of the story, which is the resolution, is where the conflict is resolved and the characters' fates are determined. So the resolution provides closure for the audience, tying up loose ends and providing a sense of finality. So the resolution is where the conflict is resolved and where the story ends or where the story concludes, and also brings about the theme of the play. So all major and minor narrative threads are brought to a definitive conclusion. So the resolution, also known as the denouement, is the final part of the plot where all remaining conflicts are resolved and the story ends. So in our next lesson, we'll be looking at the elements of drama. Thank you for your time.